Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Mid-American Action Night on College Football Tradition. It's Rick Partika, joined alongside Jacob Vanderford, Lucas Miller. I'm Bryan Partika, alongside College Football Tradition. We're here to talk MAC football ahead of the 2026 college football season. Last year, we saw Western Michigan, the Broncos, came out of nowhere, won the league, beat Miami of Ohio in the conference championship game, then won their bowl game over Conference USA champion Kennesaw State. A really good season for WMU. But now we head into a completely different year. We have so many teams to talk about today. Got my dad on the show, a Kent State alum. Dad, do you have anything to mention about the MAC or your time in MAC country throughout your life?
Let's see. I was there in '83 when they broke the 21 game losing streak.
Who's they?
I was busy.
Who?
Kent State. They had a 21 game losing streak. And I didn't go to the game, even though I knew they had a chance to win and break it. I was busy studying in the college building and listening, and they won. They tore down the goalpost. And about a 2-mile walk, they carried it all the way downtown Kent, one of the big long goalpost bars. And from my window in the building, the infamous Parthenon building you see when they had that little shooting incident back in 1970, I was in that building and I saw them carry the goalpost right by my building. It's like, darn, I missed out on that.
Dang.
Oh well. Mm-hmm.
That's fun.
Another little trivia thing from back in the day, 1980s, early 80s, they served beer at the college football games, which was very rare back in them days. Now, something happened and they went away for 25, 30 years. They didn't sell beer anymore. I don't know. They found Jesus. I don't know, woke or I don't know. Who knows what else, what it was. Now they sell beer again, but they actually sold beer. They were the only place I knew that college stadium that sold beer in the early 80s.
What did they have? What did they have available to them?
What?
Yeah, what kind of beer? Was it just like cans?
No, it was draft beer. I don't know what, just draft beer.
Oh, just regular.
And you notice
okay.
I didn't mention much about the football team yet, have I? No, I don't think I have.
I don't know if you have to. I do have a trivia question for the group. So this year we have some changes to the MAC. We obviously know Northern Illinois out. They are in the Mountain West Conference. UMass back in as a full member, as well as Sacramento State is this is UMass's second consecutive year in the MAC. Sacramento State enters from the state of California to enter the league this year. I think a few of you remember Jordan Lynch. He was the quarterback for Northern Illinois in 2012, 2013, that era. He was the Heisman Trophy finalist alongside Johnny Manziel. The year that they went 12-1, they won the MAC. They beat actually Kent State, who was ranked at the time, in the MAC championship game. It was a double overtime thriller. Who did Northern Illinois lose to in the Orange Bowl in 2012?
Notre Dame?
It's not a bad guess.
It's not
Orange Bowl. I'll get Orange Bowl, so ACC team. Back before the playoff, so
Clemson?
2012. No, that's not a bad guess either. It's not Clemson, no.
I'm going to say Florida State.
Florida State? That's it. It's Florida State.
Let's go.
Yeah. This was on the cusp for Florida State before they won the national title the following year.
Yeah. That was Jameis Winston year, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was he quarterback in 2012? I don't know if he was actually the quarterback.
No, he was a freshman the year that they won it all, I think. I think that was the year he won the Heisman, right?
You're so right, because it was back-to-back freshman Heisman winners.
I think 2012 he sat out because he was stealing crab legs.
That was after he won the Heisman. That was after he won the Heisman was the whole scandal. Yeah, because that was all over ESPN. Wow. It wouldn't have had any reason to be on ESPN if he wasn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to jump right into it. We got to talk about Akron football, just 35, 40 minutes away from where Rick Partika is sitting right now. So, Akron football, the past couple years, has been an absolute disaster, not at the account of Joe Moorhead. He's been the coach going into his fifth year, 2-10, 2-10, 4-8, 5-7, a slow progression for the Akron Zips over the years. Haven't made a bowl game yet. Remember, they've only won one bowl game in their history. That was the famous Idaho Potato Bowl back in 2015 when Terry Bowden was the coach. What's our look on the Zips going into a year like this?
I feel like Rick needs to go first.
Yeah.
Well, they really don't have a too big a tough a game out of conference. I mean, Wake Forest, Minnesota, it's not
Max,
super powerhouses.
Max
You know, a
standards,
lot of
I
these
would
teams,
say.
a lot of these guys played Florida State, Alabama, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. So their schedules. I don't know. But what are they returning, Brian? I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't look. They
No,
returning a lot.
that's totally fine. They're going to need a new quarterback, that's for sure. But they do bring back 1,000-yard rusher Jordan Gant. He returns. They have a couple receivers who are a little young. They do actually, compared to the rest of the league, return a decent amount of offensive line production from the year prior. So that is something to look at for a team in the MAC that traditionally has gotten rated from the American and the Big Ten over the years. So I look at this offense and I'm like, there's possibilities here. There's definitely talent. There's definitely guys who have been around in the locker room for a little bit. I think that the goal for sure is to go bowling. 2-10, like I said, 2-10, 4-8, 5-7. You're on an upward trajectory. I think they really like Joe Moorhead over there in Akron, and I think that this is a year where if you start 2-2 in the non-con, you're on your way there.
Looking at the schedule, I'm seeing. I'm just gonna like break it down on what I think who I think they're gonna lose to. I think like Wake Forest is gonna be a loss for Akron, Minnesota that's two, UNLV that's three, and then I think Miami of Ohio they're returning a lot of great continuity for this next year, and then Western Michigan will be another loss as well, potentially Ohio. So I think they can get to 6 wins potentially with some of these other teams. You got Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan. Robert Morris, some of these teams, like I think that Akron can beat some of these teams, like Bryan said, if you're returning a 1,000-yard rusher like that. It's really just going to be telling to see what their defense looks like in Akron. Can they stop some of these teams in the MAC that have some of those more high-powered offenses?
Yeah, I'm not sure what currently the quarterback battle looks like. Like if they have named a starter yet, but I know that like that was one of the teams in the MAC where there was seeming to be a quarterback battle going on like in the off season. So I think like once we determine who the QB is going to be for them, that might show like what the ceiling is for this team. But like Jacob said, there are a couple games that like you can definitely see them winning. I think once we get into like, the midweek MAC games is where it's really going to tell the tale of like, will this team go bowling or not? Because they have some games later in the year where they're playing Ohio, Western Michigan, at Miami, Ohio. That'll be tough. So I think once you get into the thick of it, like them winning against Robert Morris will be huge for them. And then as well as like maybe the game at Kent State, that's probably one that will be pretty big. Um, but there's a couple games like near the back end. I think the UMass game could be one that could help them with getting into bowl eligibility, depending where they stand, like by the time they get to that week.
Think if they head into the bye week, which is week 9 for them, if they head into that with 4 wins, I think they're definitely going bowling because that would mean RMU is a win, two of either UNLV, Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, and then Kent State are all wins. And if you enter this stretch, because I'll say Western Michigan's a loss, I think Ohio could be a toss-up game. At UMass, I think you want to win that, and then Buffalo. This is one of the few schedules I look at where I'm like, okay, the tail end of your schedule, if you go into the final 2 weeks with 4 wins, I think you could absolutely get to a bowl game. So Akron, I look at this and I'm like, everything kind of plays out for you. I really like this schedule layout for them. I think, you definitely got to get that Robert Morris win. And then if you're able to sneak UNLV, but I don't know. And then Wake and
Well,
Minnesota, both were bowl winners last year, I believe. Both 9-win teams.
How about this, Brian? Quarterback's a question still, you said, guys?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, what if Brendan Sorsby shows up tomorrow at camp?
Oh my gosh.
What do you think? Does that change anything?
Absolutely.
You never know.
You never know. What? Well, okay. Speaking of quarterbacks, one of the quarterbacks that's in contention there is a guy named Reese Poffenbarger. I'm just doing some research on this Reese guy. He's been around the block. In 2021, he was at Old Dominion. 2022 to 23, he was at Albany. He was at Miami of Florida from in 2024, and then previously to Akron, he was at North Texas. So he's been at all these different schools. He started at Albany. He was the CAA Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was the FCS Rookie of the Year in 2022, and he broke the single school record for single game passing yards with 412 yards in a game against Fordham. So if he can do any of that, if he can bring some of that passing ability to this offense, that would be great. But again, we're down to two quarterbacks in this race, so it may not even be him.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned Reese because he obviously sat behind Drew Mestamaker last year. He was in a good system in one of the systems that was one of the best offenses in the country. I believe they were in the top 10 in basically every statistical category. So when you're coming from that kind of system and you're coming into a backfield like the one Akron has and an offensive line production like the one Akron has, I think that there's some upside there. So I'm not down on Akron. I think that they absolutely can make a bowl game. It's in the wheelhouse, but I don't think it's an upsetting season for their standards if they only come out of this 4-8, 5-7. Yeah. So that'll be kind of interesting to see as we walk through the season in the MAC. Going on to Ball State, we go to the state of Indiana. This is a team that travels to Ohio State to start the year. They also got a game at Liberty. They play Stony Brook in the non-conference and then at Northwestern in their new building to round out their non-conference schedule. Ball State, one of the worst offenses probably overall last year. And then second year head coach, he was 4-8 last year. That's Mike Uramovich. And he brought in some guys from Division II Concord. Also got in Maxwell Wentz from Dartmouth, an offensive lineman who I thought played pretty well last year. So a couple D2 connections because Coach Mike, he was on the high school ranks in his previous stops before getting into the college realm. So what's our outlook on Ball State heading into this year?
I'm not feeling great about Ball State, guys. To be truthful, I only have them potentially beating Stony Brook and Sacramento State. The rest of their games, I just feel like are going to be tough. You look at Ohio State to start the year. I mean, that is just a brutal start. They're going to get absolutely slaughtered, like 63-0 in that game. You're at the shoe. That's tough. Then you go to Stony Brook. Maybe you can pick yourself up after an Ohio State game, but maybe it's like, you're just totally defeated that they dropped that game at Stony Brook. Who knows? But then moving forward after that, you've got at Liberty, you're going to Kent, you got Toledo, you got Northwestern, you got a Bowling Green. Like all of those games, that is going to be a tough stretch. I think they lose all those games. Maybe they pick themselves up with a Sac State win before the bye week. But after that, I mean, I have them losing the rest of their games. It's just a tough max schedule for Ball State, and it's a team that really hasn't been on the winning side of things in recent memory for me. So yeah, I mean, I have them going 2-10 this year.
One promising upside, Bryan, for Ball State this year is their kicker transferred from Missouri, Brody Bohm, redshirt sophomore, and they're looking good things for him.
I think from what I've
you need to win those in the MAC. You need to have a good kicker.
True.
It doesn't seem like they're returning that many people. I think from what I looked at, there was like a handful of starters or a handful of guys that they had production wise last year. It might have been like four or five. Um, I think there's like a certain stretch in this schedule where I think is like very big for them. I think that Sacramento State game, you get a bye week, you go to UMass and you play Buffalo. That stretch right there in particular, I look at it of like maybe they could pick up some wins on that stretch after coming off of the bye week. But I mean, like Jacob mentioned, if you're gonna go, like I'm not even worried about the Ohio State one because like I think like that you're obviously going into that knowing you're going to play a Big Ten team. It's like the meat of their schedule when they get into the Bowling Green, Sacramento State, UMass, Buffalo, and Ohio. Those are the games that like are probably of utmost importance for them of trying to get into bowl contention. Because like once you get into those like I mentioned before, the midweek MAC games, like Ball State is usually a team where they're kind of like trailing in the wrong direction and they can maybe pick somebody off late in the year in conference. So, I mean, it's going to be a really tough start for them and they're going to probably have to work like majorly uphill probably like once you get to the Bowling Green game, I think.
Yeah, it'll definitely be an uphill battle for Ball State this year. Need to see something from the offensive side of the ball. So we'll absolutely be keeping an eye on them early in the year, see what that team looks like. Going over to Bowling Green, right outside of Toledo, Ohio. The Falcons, last year under Eddie George, 4 wins, not too bad. But I'm looking at the schedule this year, and as far as MAC schedules go, this might be one of the easiest. I mean, you have Sacramento State in their first year in the FBS. You get to host Ball State. You go to Buffalo, one of the easier road trips to make. Host Kent State. You go to Toledo in a year like this where they're making a lot of transitions. They lost a ton of guys to UConn in the transfer portal. And then you got UMass to end the year. I mean, this is a team that I'm looking at like after the bye when you got Kent State at Toledo, UMass, like those are absolutely games that you could win. So outside of the non-con where you travel to Nebraska, Jacob, your Cornhuskers, to a
Yep.
newish Iowa State team, and then you host South Florida, like this could be a very interesting year. A lot of first-year coaches on that schedule.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, like one of the big things that I'm curious to see from this Bowling Green team is the defense, what they can do. In this past season, they allowed 23.1 points per game after September. So within their first couple games, gave up quite a few points, but then that defense started to gel a little bit more with some of those defensive ends and linebackers. And so I'm hoping to see that again from Bowling Green this year. I think if they can get guys to rush the passer, get some sacks, get some interceptions against, like Bryan said, a pretty favorable max schedule. I think they should be able to make some noise. I mean, I look at some of these games, Nebraska, Iowa State, USF. Like if they can pick up one of those games in more of a shocking win, that could prove dividends for them moving forward, and give them the confidence that they need for the rest of their max schedule.
Hey, Bryan. I'm going to have to sign off soon because we've got the late start. I got to put things away. It's getting dark over here in Ohio.
Oh,
I got to put things away in the yard. I just want to point out something to show you guys how serious the MAC is in their football. Look at week 9. It's only 2 games. You know what day that falls on? October 31st, Halloween.
Dang.
So it's more important to get their guys off so they can go trick-or-treating than play football.
Yikes. That's crazy.
This is the MAC.
That's the MAC. That's usually when the bye week falls for a lot of teams because that's right before they make the transition to weekday football. But I'm really happy for those guys that it falls on these Halloween weekends because a lot of these MAC schools people don't know about it. They're party schools, man.
Yeah, Bowling Green and Kent State have great Halloweens, and they got to go on the road.
Yes.
Oh well.
Well,
I got hey guys.
Go to
nice being on. Would like to stay on longer. Maybe next time. What conference would be next week, Bryan? You don't like to tease?
We don't know yet. Yeah, it could be Sun Belt. It could be SEC. We have no idea.
Add your dad to the group chat.
Yeah,
I'm gonna add. Yeah. Yes. All right.
Give me the group chat, and maybe I'll join you guys soon on another podcast.
Sounds good.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Rick. Good to see you.
Nice meeting you.
Sounds good. All right. Sounds like we were talking. Were we still talking Bowling Green?
Yeah. Is he off?
I don't have anything to add, Lucas.
Yeah, I was gonna add a little bit. So I was looking at kind of their quarterback battle as well. It's a little bit interesting. They have a couple of transfers that come in, and they have one returner, which is Hunter. I'm not gonna pronounce his last name correctly. It's Najim, possibly Najm is how you spell that. But one of their transfers is from Oregon at quarterback, which is Austin Novosad. I don't know if any of you recognize that name. I think he was there for a couple years. Um, Trying to see. He was a four-star recruit. So that is going to be interesting to see if they're going to put him as the starter or not. The one that he's battling with is Jay Cassantine, which is a transfer from a Division two school, Assumption. He was the conference's MVP in 2025. So that's an interesting quarterback battle there. You have somebody coming in from, Power Four at the ranks of Oregon, going up against somebody who was a star in Division two. So I think once we get the quarterback figured out there as well, like that's another team where like that offense could be very high powered, especially with Eddie George, at the helm. So that's one that we should probably keep an eye on just to see who ends up starting for them at quarterback going into the first week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully expect Novosad to win the job,
Right.
but you did see Najim, like you did see he at least played in some games for them last year and has proven to show some sparks. Although, what can you really tell in a few snaps of 3 games? It's hard to really say at this point going into the offseason. Um, so yeah, that's going to be one of the teams that we're going to look at as well. Going over to Buffalo, this is a team that has definitely overperformed expectations over the past couple of years. Non-con, very favorable. You also got Robert Morris, just like Akron does. You got Albany, so 2 FCS teams on the schedule. You go to FIU. I think that is a layup at this point in terms of max standards as far as out of conference games go. And then you go to Penn State. So you're gonna, if you could walk out of this 3-1, you're absolutely feeling great about yourself. You do have to travel to Toledo. You do host Western Michigan, to Miami, but everything else pretty manageable. So as far as Buffalo goes this upcoming year, I think with this schedule, they could absolutely make a bowl game. I'm a little curious about what their pass rush looks like. Bring in a couple D2 transfers. You got Savion Brown, like he's a decent guy. He comes in. So you got some guys from Cal PA, IUP, some of those guys who played in the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference of the Division Two League. You got Zach Bergman from Missouri Southern. It's hard to tell with some of these guys. I think looking at the record of Pete Lembo, like he's entering his 3rd year, he has a winning record. I think that they could absolutely still contend for a bowl game going into this year.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm kind of looking at with this team is the offensive production. They were pretty low ranking throughout the country in that side of things. And I'm really just looking at the quarterback battle, as is with most teams that we look at in these podcasts. Like, really, the quarterbacks are gonna make or break your team in some of those desperation moments, 2-minute drills, those sorts of things. So, looking at a quarterback that they're bringing in Wingate transfer Elijah Holmes. Had a lot of great D2 production, but we never know if that transfers to D1. Sometimes it does, i.e., Trinidad Chambliss. But this guy threw for 3,000 plus yards, 24 touchdowns last season. But again, there's 2 other people in this contention for this quarterback battle. You got Jason Wright, and then you got Mason Cumbie as well. And then a lot of first year redshirt freshmen in the running back department and the wide receiver department, specifically Dwayne Early Jr. and folks like that. So interested to see. It seems like they're bringing in a lot of D2 production from other schools in the transfer portal. So I'm just curious to see how that will transfer for Buffalo and the MAC.
Yeah, I feel like this is a year where Buffalo could probably find like that 6-6, 7-5 mark. I just feel like looking at their schedule, there's like so much back and forth because I think like they'll beat Albany and then probably lose at FIU and at Penn State, beat Robert Morris, and then it's like each one of these games in my head is kind of like a toss up just because like you don't know what it's gonna be like middle of the season in the MAC. Like I don't think they'll win at Miami, Ohio, and maybe not at Toledo, but I think like they could probably win at home against UMass or Central Michigan, maybe. So it's like they could reach like the 6-6 mark to go bowling. They've done it in previous seasons. We've seen them go like 7-5, 8-4. So it wouldn't surprise me if they randomly are up in that 8-4 mark again. Like it it's always back and forth with Buffalo. But like you said, they have a couple of key guys that are returning. They have a couple of transfers that came in. The defensive side of the ball, I think I would like, I'm hoping that on the defense they're pretty good because I think that that's something that they're going to need once they get back into the back half of their season in the MAC, especially in the secondary aspect of it. It seems that they have a pretty good secondary with guys that are returning. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I think that they're one of those teams that's going to be like right in the middle around 6-6.
Mhm.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that as well. So we'll keep an eye on Buffalo throughout the year. In addition to Central Michigan, this is a team going into their second year with Matt Drinkle at the helm. Last year, he did make a bowl game. He finished 7-6 overall in the MAC. They enter a year where you have your star, and that's Langston Lewis. He was the leading receiver a year ago, over 40 receptions, nearly 600 yards. He's absolutely the guy you have to get the ball to. This is no question about it. You do return Brock Townsend, who's a solid freshman running back. So I feel like offensively, you have some pieces. You bring in some JUCO guys. You also bring in Hunter Zirkle from Cumberland's. That was an NAIA school. He had double-digit sacks, double-digit tackles for loss last year. So I think that he's someone who's going to see a decent amount of playing time. We don't often see those NAIA guys transfer over to the MAC very often, but this is one of those guys that we could absolutely see get a lot of snaps this year. What's our outlook on the Chippewas heading into this year?
I think the biggest concern for me is just Central Michigan being able to compete with some of the teams that they're playing in the scoring department. We talked about Langston Lewis as a wide receiver, but do we have a guy that can get him the ball? Do we have a running back? Do we have some other production pieces surrounding that offense to get the ball rolling? And do we have an offensive line that can protect the quarterback in these ventures as well? So I'm looking at the schedule and I'm seeing that there's New Mexico at the beginning of the year. Typically, New Mexico is a pretty good team. Then you got like a Wyoming team, even. You've got a Miami team that we all thought in that ACC podcast they're going to be top of the league and in the country as well. Then you got a Western Michigan, who I'm pretty high on in the MAC. I think they can repeat some of the things that they did last year. Miami of Ohio. So some of these games, I'm just concerned looking at the teams that they played last year and seeing that against top 60 opponents, they got beat by an average score of 41-8. I'm just hoping that they can get some more production from their offense and try to spread the ball around a little bit more to get some scoring on the board.
From what I looked at, it seemed that their defense had been pretty solid last season, and it doesn't seem like they're returning a lot of production from the defense last year to this year. I think that what I saw was they only have like two or three guys that are coming back defensively, especially like in the secondary realm. So hopefully that has been rebuilt enough to go into the season because like once you're gonna go and play like we've talked about offenses like Miami, Ohio, Eastern Michigan. Buffalo, we were just talking about a bit. They're going to need to have a good enough defense, especially a secondary, to compete with those teams, especially later on in the season. Um, so I think, like we've talked about their offense, that they still have their star power back on that offensive side of the ball. It's going to be whether the defense is actually rebuilt enough to compete like in conference this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I look at the tail end of the schedule, and I look at we get to action season, and Central Michigan is playing one of the easier four-game stretches to end the year. Eastern Michigan, that game is in Detroit this year. Very interesting one. You host Sacramento State, you go to Buffalo, and you go to Ball State. Not too bad of a travel to end the year. Like, that's a very easy four-game stretch, but I would categorize Central Michigan talent-wise with those schools a lot. I'd say they're slightly above Eastern Michigan, slightly above Sac State and Ball State, but like I would still say they're in that lower middle tier ish. So I look at this and I'm like, I think CMU's a bowl team. I have no problem saying that. I think as far as like chances to make the MAC title game, I think they'll be in contention after the bye week just because of how the MAC operates. I think that 8 teams will be in contention before we get into MACtion season. So it'll be interesting to see for sure. What do you guys think about that CMU EMU game in Detroit to really kick off action.
That'll be fun for it to be in Detroit. Is it at Ford Field, I'm guessing?
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm curious to see again, like I'm always curious about the offenses. If they can if it's going to be a high scoring game or the defense is going to show up in this game. Lucas mentioned that the defense that CMU is bringing back, does EMU bring back that same quality of defenders? That kind of thing. So I'm just curious to see as we get closer to the season starting and we get a lot more I guess a surety of what are these teams going to look like? Do we have a better prediction, a better gauge on like what the offenses will do and things like that? But it'll be fun to play at Ford Field for them for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that they're doing that, especially like, that game like into November. Like that's kind of interesting that neither team then has the home field advantage that you're used to seeing when it's like freezing cold outside in November. So, I mean, that's pretty cool though for them to play each other there.
I'm guessing the Lions don't have a game there, like I guess
Well,
relatively
no,
soon
it's
after
on
that.
it's on it would be on like a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night, so they probably would have enough
Oh,
time
gotcha,
to
gotcha,
get it ready for Sunday unless they're playing a Thursday night game, which I don't think so at that time.
gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, it should be fun for to really showcase the Mac. I think that they're already showcased in November. Like I love weekday football, like you guys do. But it'll be really cool to have that game. One of the few neutral site games that I'm kind of a fan of going into this year. The other team that they're playing is Eastern Michigan, the Eagles. Chris Creighton, he is MAC football. He's entering his 13th year, sitting around 61 and 83 overall record. But Eastern Michigan, a really hard place to win. So shout out Bill Connolly for this stat. EMU, they've won 7 or more games just 7 times in their 51 FBS season. So just 7 times have they had like a more than decent year is what I like to say. So Chris Creighton, he's absolutely built that program to be semi-consistent. Hasn't really done too much to make noise league wide in the MAC. They were 4-8 a year ago, one of the worst teams in FBS. I would say. So I'm looking at this team going into this year. Like you do have some offensive starters returning. You do have the quarterback Noah Kim. He threw for 2,800 yards last year, 18 touchdowns. He was able to escape the pocket a decent amount. He's someone who I really like watching on a Tuesday night. So he's someone who I look at this MAC offense for Eastern Michigan and you have some pieces returning. What's our outlook on Eastern Michigan going into this year? Opening up with 2 California schools, both at home, travel not too egregious.
Is the Sacramento State game a home game or is that a neutral site game?
I think it's a home game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those two games right off the bat are pretty good for them. I feel like I don't really actually have like the stat to back this up, but I feel like a lot of times the MAC teams are pretty like competitive against Mountain West teams, like if they match up week 0 or week 1. So I think especially playing that game at home against San Jose State, I think they could win those first two. Again, I don't really know what Sacramento State's gonna come out looking like right away, in their first game in FBS, but at Michigan State, at Wisconsin, I would imagine chalk both of those up as losses. But then, like, they have Lindenwood, they have UMass and Akron. I think that those are winnable games. I feel like there's a lot of like room for this team to bounce back after going 4-8. They do return like a lot of their production on the defensive side of the ball. I believe they have like upwards of 15 starters coming back in that rotation, so that's pretty solid. For a MAC team to get that many guys back. They didn't transfer out to any Power Four schools or anything. Um, I don't know. I just have a pretty good feeling about Eastern Michigan. I feel like they might surprise some people this year. I don't really know if I would label them completely right now as like a dark horse in the conference, but I feel like they can definitely give some of the teams that are like, we're looking at as being like in control of the MAC. I think they can give them a pretty good run at some point. I If I'm looking at this correctly, they do not play Miami, Ohio. Doesn't look like.
Uh, doesn't look like they do. No.
Yeah, so I mean that's good in that regard. You dodge them, and then you get the Central Michigan game as neutral site. I don't know. I think that the schedule is looking pretty good for them, at least in my opinion for right now. The Toledo game will probably be pretty big. At Ohio is huge. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I think that definitely bowling, and I think like the ceiling is that like they could possibly be in contention to reach Detroit. I don't know.
This is kind of a fun deal. In week two, you got Noah Kim playing his former team, Michigan State. So that should be kind of a fun game for them. But yeah, I mean, going back to Lucas's point, I mean, I think the defense should be in solid hands this year. Whenever I look at teams, I always look to see if they have veteran production returning. They've got five seniors returning across the defense. You got defensive end Carter Evans, you got tackle Warren Stevens, Teyu. So you got a lot of different players across the board, nickels, corners, all of that. That should be able to provide a veteran present for some of these younger players as well. So hopefully that defense shows up. Noah Kim will throw the ball around the yard. The thing that I'm most concerned about this year with Eastern Michigan would be their rushing attack. I feel like in the MAC, you typically try to have a good balance and you try to have a good running game. And losing a running back like Dante McMillan, former 1,000-yard rusher, you're bringing in three different guys from different Power Four schools. You got Virginia Tech and Syracuse transfers coming in, but all combined, they've only rushed 56 yards within their time within D1 college football. So interested to see what the rushing attack can do, but overall, it should look pretty promising for Eastern Michigan outside of the first half of their season. You're playing some Big Ten teams, Wisconsin, Michigan State. Those are on the road. You're playing a team like San Jose State, who's been a fairly good team in the past. But I think if they can stack wins in the latter half of the season, they should be in good shape.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like you really do have this is so similar to Central Michigan and so similar to we talked about Ball State's schedule. Like the tail end is where you could really get get kind of your wins. Like Eastern Michigan, if you start the beginning of the year, well, actually in the beginning of the year, I feel like if you start 4-2, that's huge.
Yeah.
Sac State, San Jose State, Lindenwood, UMass, like going into Akron 4-2, like that wouldn't be
Yeah,
too shabby at all. Yeah.
and they could very well start out 4-2. I mean, they could even win then against Akron and go in with a winning record against Toledo in the home game, and then you're looking at that Ohio game as a huge matchup in the MAC.
Yeah, and then that one would have a ton of implications. One of the final Saturday games in the conference before we get to Maction play. Yeah, Eastern Michigan, I could trust Chris Creighton enough and some of the transfers they brought in. I have no idea on Braden Bennett from Virginia Tech and Malachi James from Syracuse as far as the running back goes. I haven't seen them play. Haven't seen them play a lick.
No.
Like, like they it says they combined for 56 rushing yards last year. Those two guys,
Yeah.
geez.
And the other tough thing too is like the offensive line. You're losing some good guards and tackles as well. I don't know what these guys are going to be able to run behind because if they couldn't. I mean, they weren't starters, I'm sure, and they weren't logging a bunch of yards that way. But I mean, if you're not able to run behind a VTech or a Syracuse offensive line, I don't know what that's going to look like at Eastern Michigan. So we'll definitely have to see.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
That'll be
very
interesting.
very interested to see when we actually all get our projections filled out for the MAC, what it looks like, because I feel like it's going to be all over the place for each of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the hardest conferences to predict. When we did our Conference USA episode, and I'm someone who always battles between Conference USA and the MAC as like as the 10th best or ninth best FBS conference. It's always easier for me to predict Conference USA, but when I get to the MAC, it's just no idea
It's
how
tough.
It's
to
always
project the standings, at
Yeah, it's
least.
always those weeknight games that it's like the favorite in the conference will lose to somebody who has like two wins by the time November comes around. So
Yeah. Even the runner-up last year, Miami of Ohio, they finished the year after their bowl game 7-7. That's one of the most rare records you could have in FBS football. It's just it'll be interesting to look at the season once you get to November because there will be 8 to 9 teams still in mathematical contention in the league. One of those teams that actually did hang on for a little bit last year when nobody projected them to was Kent State. Mark Carney enters his second year. He was 5-7 last year. This is one of, if not the toughest places to win in all of college football. Roster wise, not projected to be one of the highest in SP plus, but you do return starting quarterback Drew DeShields. Like he was a weapon. He was absolutely one of the guys who could be relied on last year on this team. I thought he played well under pressure. I thought he did good against the rush. Threw for 18 touchdowns. He only threw 3 interceptions. Like I thought he had a really good year, and that's an offense that's really hard to operate. Like there's not super amount of weapons around you, so I'm curious to see this Kent State squad. Wish my dad could have stayed on for this one, but.
Yeah.
What are you guys' thoughts on Kent State, the Golden Flashes, heading into a year after they coming off of a 5-win season?
Yeah, not only do they return Drew DeShields, but they bring back a pretty good amount of people on the offensive line. They have three returning starters on the O line. So that's a huge help for even with bringing back your quarterback. That's huge. I don't really know what the running back position looks like, but as you said, I think with how much, they were explosive on offense, at least through the passing game, if they can get it out to a couple of the receivers, I believe that they is Darius Clark back again this year, or did he just transfer in?
I
I think he
think
was
this.
there last year.
I think he was one of the. I think I played with him on NCAA. That's why I think I recognize that
Yeah.
name.
I mean, yeah, I think at least if you have like that foundation of you're bringing back a quarterback that was that good for you last year, they obviously have turned it around so much. Um, why not keep moving forward with it? I think this year when they play, they obviously have, at South Carolina, but then they get Wofford and then they go to Ohio State. Then you get a stretch of two home games against Ball State and Ohio. Again, I think this is one of the teams where like you look at just a certain stretch. They have two of those, I think. They have Ball State, Ohio, and Western Michigan. They somehow go to South Florida. And then it's like a game against Akron, a game against Sacramento State, and then you play Bowling Green, Miami, Ohio, and Eastern Michigan. So this schedule looks really tough to me. I don't know if you guys are going to read it the same way, but it looks like one of the hardest ones I've seen so far in the MAC.
Yeah, I'll pull up a quick stat for y'all since we are CFB tradition. So the last time that Kent State football won a bowl game, feel free to fact check me on this, but it was 2019. They beat Utah State 51-41 in the Frisco Bowl. So that's what 7 years ago now. So we'll see if Kent State can make a bowl game this year. Like Lucas said, I think the schedule could be a little tough. You're looking at playing South Carolina. You got Ohio State. Those are two pretty big teams that you'll have to play. Although I have South Carolina towards the bottom of the SEC again this year. Then you're playing teams like Western Michigan and South Florida is another one. Even Akron. We talked about EMU as well. And then some of these other teams like Miami and Bowling Green as well. Like we talked about these teams having pretty good rosters, returning some continuity, some good production. So Kent State's really going to have to rely on DeShields and some of these other offensive playmakers to win some of these tighter games and try to steal some of these games from maybe a Western Michigan on the road or an Akron or an EMU as well.
The Ball State and Western Michigan game and Akron are three that they absolutely like have to, if you want to call it steal or just win, because when you're finishing at Bowling Green, which I believe that's a rivalry game if I'm not wrong, and then Miami, Ohio, and Eastern Michigan, which are two teams that we're like pretty high on, which I think a lot of people are pretty high on to like possibly win the MAC or be in the MAC championship. Those games early on are just huge for Kent State if they want any chance of going bowling.
Yeah, and that's the case with a lot of these teams. When we talk about Akron and Kent State and Ball State and even Eastern Michigan, I'll throw into that category as well. And we'll talk about UMass next. I think that it's all about how you do against each other when you talk about who's going to end up potentially breaking through to go to a bowl game because you could see upsets all the time in this league. But who's beating the teams that are really at the bottom? Because there are some bottom of the barrel teams every year in this league. And last year it was UMass. So that's the team we'll kind of talk about next if we don't have anything else with Kent. And this is Joe Harasumiak. He's entering his second year. They were 0-12 last year. This was the worst team in the FBS. It was hard. It was just a really hard season. I mean, they're going to get that win this year because they have Sacred Heart and Stonehill back to back at home, two bad FCS teams at home. So in the beginning of the year, they travel to Rutgers. Their other non-conference game is at UConn. This is one of the easiest schedules in FBS, but it's one of the worst teams in FBS playing that schedule. There's not a ton of upside I see with UMass going into this year. Transfers RJ Johnson the third from Florida A&M. He's assumed to take over the quarterback job for UMass. This is a team that had no offensive line last year, a team that's bringing in a lot of, it seems like HBCU transfers, and they bring in a couple guys from St. Francis. If you guys know this, I'm Lucas, you probably know St. Francis was FCS, but they transitioned down this upcoming year to Division III in all athletics as they dropped that Division I title from their sports. What's our outlook on UMass this year, the Minutemen?
I'm looking at probably their backup quarterback, Pop Watson the third, William Watson. He was previously committed to Nebraska before he was at Va Tech. So that's really interesting that he's on this team. But I mean, yeah, like you said, Bryan, a lot of these different players coming in, transfers are from, some of those HBCU teams and different places like that. So I'm not entirely sure what the production will look like for that offense this year. Defensively, it seems like overall this team is experiencing a lot of turnover, which I would have expected from a team that was 0-12. So it's going to be a totally different makeup for this UMass team. But looking at their schedule, they're playing Rutgers to start the year. That's on the road. For me, that's going to be a loss. But then you get this stretch of Sacred Heart. You've got Stonehill and Sacramento State. And I think those are three games that they could potentially win before it starts to get tough again. You got Eastern Michigan, Miami, Ohio, Buffalo, and UConn. I think those are all going to be four losses. If they can keep some of those games close, they might be able to stick into those games. But if they want to go bowling, they got to take at least one of those games in that stretch. And then they got a Ball State. And then towards the end of the year, you're going to Toledo, you got Akron, and then you're going to Bowling Green. Those are tough games on the road. If they have any chance of going bowling after an 0-12 year, that would be an insane upgrade if they could. I'm looking at them taking maybe 4 games this year, but anything above 0 wins is definitely an improvement.
Yeah, I agree with you about the games against Sacred Heart, Stonehill, and Sac State. I mean, the Sac State game is we're gonna have to see what Sac State's all about in the first couple weeks, but I think they could probably get to 4 wins. I think I no, I want to say 3 because I think they're gonna beat Sacred Heart and Stonehill. They could lose at Sac State, and then I think they're gonna just somehow pull a win out somewhere, like either against Ball State or like Akron. But at Buffalo is tough, at UConn is tough, and then Miami, Ohio, and Eastern Michigan back to back is just really hard. Um, but anything is an improvement from an 0-12 season. I'm gonna put them at around 3 wins.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. This team's not going bowling. Even if they do somehow magically get to 6 wins, because two of those would be FCS wins, you wouldn't be bowl eligible because I believe it has to be 5 wins against FBS teams. So this is a team that I don't think is really even trying to go bowling this year based on the schedule lineup. They're just trying to get a couple wins under their belt. I think they get that this year. I think 2-10, 3-9, 3-9 is not off the table. I don't think. But you got to get those wins early, as we have talked about. A team that I'm not too worried about. It's Miami of Ohio. Chuck Martin, he's also entering his 13th year, 72-74 overall. The Red Hawks, last year's MAC runner-up, returning a ton of talent on the offense and defensive lines, starters all over the place in both units there. Couple question marks on offense as far as attackers go. They do bring in some transfers from some Power Four schools like David McComm, he's from Kansas. And then you also have Thomas Gutowski, he's a redshirt freshman. So a little bit of a QB battle going on there, as we do have seen in the MAC conference. What's our outlook on the Red Hawks this year? Do we think they make it back to Detroit?
Yeah, I think that they're probably looking to be like the favorite right now. I don't know if they will actually live up to that and make it all the way back and win it, but I think they could make a deep run in this conference. I wanted to kind of bring up the quarterback you said. Thomas Kokowski. He is a redshirt freshman, so he did play in 5 games last year. He ended up making 3 starts later on in the year. He had 575 yards, 4 touchdowns, and just 1 pick. And he did make his first career start actually against Ball State. He ended up playing in both the MAC championship game and then in the Arizona Bowl. So that's a player that you at least, even with him being young, you have the experience that he was able to play in a bowl game. He's able to play in the championship game. He has gone through a winning season last year. So if he's able to be like a guy that like everyone's able to rally around in the locker room, especially with being a redshirt freshman, I mean, that's huge for them. Um, I think you're definitely looking at a team that is the favorite in the conference right now. Like I said, I mean, you look at their schedule, you have a couple games against ACC and Big 12 opponents there, but once they get into the conference schedule, like you have Ohio at home, they have Akron at home, they have Bowling Green at home. The away games are, I don't want to say they're easy because nothing's easy in this conference, but like at UMass, they're at Kent State. They finish off the year at Western Michigan. I think there's all signs are pointing to this team is, once again the favorite to win it.
Yeah, guys, I'm looking at this Miami team and I'm looking at the turnaround that they've had. Going back to 2014, 2015, they had a 5-19 record over those 2 seasons. From 2016 to 2022, 40-40 record or 500. They're starting to turn things around. Then by the time we get to 2023, up until now, they've been 27-15. So props to Chuck Martin for building this program. I'm really interested to see, like Lucas said, with that quarterback battle. Both of these quarterbacks are going to be dual threat, so they'll be able to run the ball and hopefully rely on some of that run game as well. They're bringing in a few running backs to pair with Deshaunte Jones, and so we'll see what they can do there. And then I'm really interested to see what this O line can do. One of the things that I think really sets the MAC apart is trying to beef up that offensive line and trying to ground and pound. A lot of these quarterbacks may not throw for too many yards, but they should be able to get some ground game going. And so with an all MAC tackle in Evan Malcor, who comes from Northern Illinois. Like we talked about, Northern Illinois is transferring conferences this year. But looking forward to seeing what the O line can do there as well. And again, like Lucas said, looking at their schedule, it doesn't look too tough. They go to Pittsburgh at the beginning of the year, which should be a little tricky. And then at Cincinnati and then UConn at home. I think those 3 games will be tough towards the beginning of the year. But the rest of their games they should be chilling with some of these games that they're playing. And they should be able to win some of these games as well, most of these games. Then you got Western Michigan. It's a championship rematch at the end of the year. That's at Western Michigan. So I'm curious to see what that'll look like and see if Miami of Ohio can avenge that loss in the title game, the MAC title game. But yeah, I'm not too worried about Miami of Ohio. I think they've got a good year ahead of them.
Yeah, I think that they have a great year ahead of them too. At Pittsburgh, at Cincinnati, what are the chances they win one of those?
Man, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I don't know if they have to, but that would definitely strengthen their resume if they could. I'm looking at some of these other teams that I have towards the top of the conference in my rankings. I've got a Western Michigan, I've got an Ohio, I've got a Toledo. And then we talked about Eastern Michigan. So I mean, I think a lot of these teams are going to range around that 9-3, 8-4 win total. So if they're able to take one of those games on the road against an ACC team, against a Big 12 team, that would, I think, pay dividends for their strength of schedule, especially throughout the year.
Yeah, we'll see how that schedule plays out. I love those 2 games against Power Four opponents at Pittsburgh, at Cincinnati, for Miami, Ohio. I think those could be really good showcase games for the MAC if they're able to pull one of those out. That game at Cincinnati, should note, is at the soccer stadium in Cincinnati. So not technically an away game, kind of a neutral site game. I know those 2 campuses aren't, it's not super far drive. So it is technically a neutral site game, but it is in the city of Cincinnati. On to John Hauser. He's the first year coach of the Ohio Bobcats. They open up the season at Jacobs, Nebraska Cornhuskers. When I look at this schedule, and this is not talking about Nebraska, I think that this is a 9-win team. I mean, John Hauser, even though he's entering his first year, he's not reloading a ton. This is a team that last year won a ton of games, but Brian Smith, he was fired after some misconduct was reported within the program. So he's inheriting a team that was very talented, was very much in the contention race of the conference. And I think that they have a chance to absolutely be in it again this year, especially when you look at the tail end of that season. I do think the Miami at Western Michigan game that you guys mentioned to end the year, that last week of the season, is the biggest game in the MAC. But the Ohio at Miami game in week 11 as part of MACtion is going to be a big one as well.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio is usually one of the teams that I like to kind of root for in the MAC, so I kind of hope that they are an island team, like you said, Brian. But if the coach being under his first year, it seems as though they've replaced almost like their entire offense, it looks like. So I don't know, like it's gonna go one of either two ways. Like that could either be great, like you have a new coach, you have pretty much a whole new offense, or it could be that none of it meshes together well and you're struggling to compete with some of these teams that they usually are pretty good against. So with that being said, I don't know what to expect for when they go to play like Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Miami, Ohio. Um, I mean, at Nebraska, they're winning that easily in week one. So, yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see, especially with the new head coach, because Ohio is one of the teams in the MAC that like they're usually pretty decent. It's usually a pretty tough place to play. I know from games that I've watched, but yeah, I don't know. It's so interesting to look at because I don't know what the floor is and the ceiling is for a team like this with that many um new players and a new coach. It's very hard to read. I mean, it's very similar to when we talked about Virginia Tech the other day with James Franklin coming in. So yeah, that'll definitely be an interesting one to watch.
Ohio used to have my boy Frank Solich as their head coach. He had those Nebraska ties. So Ohio for me, the Bobcats always has sort of this special place in my heart because one of our own was there, but now they're coming to Nebraska. Honestly, I'm a little bit scared. I'm a little bit worried. We're starting out the year. We have a new quarterback coming in, Mountain West Player of the Year. I'm going to go on my Nebraska tangent now, I guess. But I'm a little bit concerned because this Ohio team is bringing back, like Bryan said, some good production. They do have a new coach, which will be interesting to see what they can do there. But Nebraska to me is a big question mark, a big unknown. And I mean, I've seen projections where they have Nebraska only winning like 6 games this next year, and so even 4 or 5. So I mean, I'm worried about that game to start the year. I think Ohio will scarily keep it close, but I think Nebraska will edge it out. But then the rest of the year, like I don't really see Ohio losing a lot of games. I'm with Bryan. I have them as a 9-win team. The only games that I have them potentially dropping would be at Miami of Ohio, like you said, in week 11, Bryan. That's going to be a tough game, and definitely a fun game to watch. And then Toledo at the end of the year, I think there could be a slip up for Ohio as well. But again, like really solid year. I think they go 9-3, if not 8-4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this is definitely, I don't know what the over under win total is, but I would take the over 7.5 if that's what it's set at. Um, I think that they're more talented than almost every team outside of Miami of Ohio that they play on their schedule. So really like the Bobcats this year. Sac State, they enter their first year of FBS play, MAC conference play, and they open it up at Eastern Michigan. They also play a game against North Dakota State at home this year. So this is a team that we're going to be able to recognize very early on. Home game against Mississippi Valley State. So they're going to get their win or two. Also get to host UMass in conference play, one of the farthest conference matches that we could possibly conjecture here. And then they go to Hawaii to end the year. This is just a wild schedule. This is a team that I was not projecting at all to move up to the FBS level of football. Not exactly the biggest player in the Big Sky Conference. They've made the FCS playoffs a few times, have been on the up and up, but absolutely have not crashed through that glass ceiling. So what's our outlook on the Hornets going into MAC play for the first time in their tenure?
I mean, I'm not super promised by Sac State. There's a lot of unknown there. I mean, like you just talked about, Bryan, moving up into a new conference, into the MAC. Not sure how they can compete against some of these teams. Um, I mean, looking at their schedule, I don't see a lot of wins here. For me, week 2 and week 3 are going to be tough. You've got Fresno State at Fresno State, and then you've got North Dakota State. Obviously, NDSU is going to be in a new conference, but I think that will be 2 tough games for Sacramento State. I think those are going to be losses. Even UMass, I mean, like we talked about in our UMass conversation, like we could see, Sac State win that. We could see UMass win that. That's an unknown. The rest of their schedule, too. I mean, we've talked about a lot of these other teams. The only team that I could see them potentially beating would be maybe Ball State, but that's at Ball State, and that's going to be tough. And then to end the year at Hawaii, they get a good vacation spot, I guess, out of it. That's fun, but like I don't see them winning that. So to me, I mean, maybe I could be wrong. I just feel like there's a lot of unknowns with this team. I only really see them being a 2 to 3 win team this year.
Yeah, what you said, Brian, about how they didn't really ever like break through in the Big Sky. I mean, it's been run by Montana State and Montana for a very long time. And neither of those teams obviously will want to move because they're ruling a portion of the FCS at this point. So I think Sac State, I mean, I think in the long run, them being in the MAC is probably going to be pretty good for them. It's going to be interesting to see like how the schedule works out in the coming years because as you mentioned, like they're going all the way to UMass. They're playing Hawaii. So I wonder like if it's gonna be something where they have to kind of work out the kinks going forward of like what the scheduling looks like for them. Um, but I think this year like it's just gonna be an adjustment of moving up. I don't really know entirely what the roster is gonna look like. Like I mean I know some of the players, but I don't know like how it's going to mesh into playing in the FBS immediately. Um, I had looked at kind of like their projected win totals earlier, and it looks like they're favored against Mississippi Valley State, and then they're slight favorite over UMass at home. So that's maybe maybe you do get the 2 wins. Um, I think even if like they don't, like it's not a huge disappointment because it's your first year in FBS. I'm
Mhm.
just very interested to see like what it looks like in general because you're being welcomed into a conference where like they play the weeknight games and it's like there's tradition in it and all this and it's like you're just kind of being thrown in there. Um, I want to see like what their home crowd looks like if they like when they play like a Bowling Green and a Ball State. Like I want to see like what that's like in their first season. But winning wise, I think they'll get the game against Mississippi Valley State, I believe, and then like maybe UMass. I don't see them picking anybody off between that Bowling Green through Central Michigan stretch.
No, I don't either. Maybe you take Kent State, maybe at Ball State. Mm. The travel isn't too egregious. It's not as bad as I thought it would be. Man, it would be so nice if Northern Illinois stayed in the MAC and Sac State went to the Mountain West.
Yeah,
What was
that makes more sense.
It's
what are
cool
we
that North
doing?
Dakota State and Sac State are playing each other though.
Yes. I do like the North Dakota State schedule. Pinpoint over to it for a little bit because they do open up hosting Jacksonville State, as we talked about. They go to Air Force as well. It's a conference game, but I love their schedule at San Jose State in a non-conference game to end the year. Yeah, we're going to know exactly what North Dakota State is very early on in the year. So Sac State, we'll see what they have to offer on the FBS level as they enter in, but I think we're all on the low end for the Hornets going into this year. We'll see what they're made of. Toledo, this is a team. Jason Candle left for UConn, so we got a first-year coach as well in this one with Mike Jacobs. They bring in a lot of transfers from the FCS level. Some guys from Mercer who wrapped up a couple, racked up a decent amount of yards, 900-yard rusher, CJ Miller, 800-yard receiver, Ajay Dabs. So you got some guys who have obviously performed and been able to play a lot and get that experience. But Toledo lost a lot of guys. And most of them went to UConn with Jason Candle. So credit to him for forming those relationships. I'm not exactly sure what this team's going to look like. This has been one of the perennial favorites, one of the faces of the MAC in recent years, been a team that's been able to pull off bowl wins, been able to pull off upsets over Power 4 opponents, Power 5 opponents. A year like this, I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I think that the non-con plays into your favor. Central Connecticut, Temple, San Diego State, all at home at Michigan State to start the year. You could start the year 3-1 and still not be one of the favorites in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what to think about the Toledo team. I think just in terms of recent year bias, I have been high on Toledo, but like we've talked about, a lot of their players did transfer to UConn with former coach Jason Candle. So, I in the previous Independence episode, I called UConn the UConn Rockets. Not sure what Toledo can be with a lot of those players leaving, but like you mentioned, Bryan, they're bringing in a lot of good production from the FCS level specifically. They do have a holdover quarterback and John Allen Richter starting this next year. And then, like we talked about, there's some good running backs, some good wide receivers. There's just a lot of unknowns with this team. Looking at their schedule too, I see to start out the year, we've got a Michigan State, we've got a San Diego State a little bit later on, then we've got a Western Michigan. I think those are going to be their big, really tough games. But then we just have to see what the rest of the conference does. Like you all have mentioned throughout this episode, it really comes down to beating their own. Like how do we see them fare against their own teams in their MAC conference? If they can stack up against some of these Ball State, Buffalo, Eastern Michigan teams, if they can win some of those games, I feel pretty confident in Toledo moving forward. But right now, it's just hard to tell.
Yeah, it's interesting. So like we saw you called them the Connecticut Rockets, so now we probably pretty much have like the Toledo Bears because they brought
Yeah.
over almost everybody from Mercer. Um, it'll be interesting to see how they perform with like bringing in so many new players. I think they have over 20 new starters at different positions. So it's gonna be very interesting rebuild of guys that have transferred in from the FCS level. Yeah, I guess that their non-conference kind of plays into their favor. I think with San Diego State and Central Connecticut, I think the Temple game will probably be tough, even with it being at home. Um, and then they get the Bowling Green rivalry game at home this year. So there's a couple of games in there that like they might have a good chance just with playing them at their home field. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's always hard to really think of what a team, even at the like group of five, group of six level is going to be when they bring in so many FCS guys. Because you just don't really know how they're going to perform at that level. Um, but yeah, I think that this is one of those teams where like it's going to be, can they get into bowling consideration? I
Mhm.
say consideration because they could have 5 wins and get in.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could. They could get in from that Notre Dame dropout at the end of the year.
Notre Dame's going to
uh,
end up going undefeated and winning the national title because we keep making all these jokes about them dropping out.
you know what? Then God bless them if they do. So Toledo, one of the teams that obviously we'll keep an eye on in the MAC. I think they'll be one of the teams that has the opportunity to start off a little bit hotter than some of these other teams, just because of the lack of bye games that they're taking on in the beginning of the year. Western Michigan, last year's MAC champions. They open up the season at the Big House at Michigan. They also play some decent out of conference opponents at Rice, who has a decent running game. They host Boise State, last year's Mountain West Conference champion and the Pac-12 favorite going into this year. As far as conference play goes, you do host Miami of Ohio at the end of the year. Everything else, cakewalk. Eastern Michigan at Akron, Bowling Green, a new Toledo team that we just talked about at Central Michigan, Kent, Buffalo. You get one of the easiest max schedules courtesy of the max schedule makers right after you won the league. I really like this Western Michigan team to repeat, especially when you bring back your quarterback. It's Brock Lowry. Shout out Canfield, Ohio. This guy, he threw for 9 touchdown passes but ran for 14. He was nearly 1,000-yard rusher. That's exactly how you have to play quarterback in the MAC, is that you have to do run first, pass second, every single game. And that doesn't just have to do with November action weather, absolutely has to do with the way these offenses are built. So I'm really a big fan of this team. I think that they have a lot of pieces returning. They bring in some good transfers. You got KJ Burley coming in from Kaiser. That's I believe down in Florida, and then Scoop Gardner coming in from Long Island. Like these are guys who had a lot of tackles for losses in the past. So this Western Michigan team, I look for them defensively to be able to hold these offenses in check. Man, they play some of the worst offenses in the MAC. I think that they will absolutely repeat as champions, or at least repeat to make it to Detroit.
I think that
Yeah.
they're go ahead, Jacob.
Oh no, sorry. I was just gonna say at the end of October, Western Michigan was 4-4, and then they get this surge. And the big reason for this surge comes down to I think their defense in some ways. You look at a Nadami Tucker, who's now in the NFL, had 14.5 sacks, 20.5 tackles for loss. So that was one of their biggest players on that team. I'm curious to see what else on defense they can do, losing a big player like that. They are bringing in some transfer pass rushers in Eckles from Ball State. You got an Austin Alexander from North Carolina. So some pretty good players, like Bryan talked about. Got some good Scoop Gardner as well as one of those good players. So interested to see what they do there. And then I'm looking at their running back rushing game. Uh, Jalen Buckley had one of the biggest reasons behind that surge as well. First 10 games, 433 yards. Last four, then 570 and six touchdowns as well. So if they can, reinvent some of that production that they've had, if they can secure the defense as well. Bryan did mention that schedule after Michigan and maybe Boise State as well. I really don't see them having too much trouble with any of these other teams. So I think Western Michigan's got another good year on their hands.
Yeah, I think they're in a really good spot. I mean, obviously the Michigan game, you have that, and then do you have the schedule up?
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
For a
um,
second.
I think Monmouth, Rice, and Boise State are three games that they could definitely win. I think anytime that if you're in the MAC and you just won the championship and you return your star running back and star quarterback, they also have an SEC transfer running back coming in from Arkansas and AJ Green. So this running back room could be very good. They also returned pretty much, I think, all their offensive line. So this is a team that like they're probably in the best spot of any of these teams in the MAC, aside from Miami, Ohio, which they play in their last game of the season at home. So this is a team that I think is probably the favorite besides Miami, Ohio. Um, interestingly enough, with those two teams being the two of the best at the end of the year last year, I mean it's a pretty decent schedule that they have going for them once they get into actual conference play. They go to Central Michigan, to Toledo. I think those are two games that they could win, even though they're road games. You get Bowling Green at home, and then obviously you finish out the year against Eastern Michigan and Miami, Ohio, both at home. Two of the other teams that we look at as possible favorites in this conference, they play at home in late November. So I think they're literally in the best spot of any of these teams.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think that anybody has a more advantageous schedule given their own roster talent. And then that game at the end of the year, Western Michigan and Miami of Ohio, as we talked about, as I mentioned before, I think it's the game of the year. And I think it just happens again the week after in Detroit. I think it's one of those situations they go into that game knowing that they're probably going to play in Detroit the following week, especially unless Toledo at Ohio also has conference implications. I don't see any of these other games outside of Toledo at Ohio and Miami at Western Michigan having conference implications in the final week of the year. So those are going to be the two games that we absolutely look at. And I think that we're going to have a conference rematch back to back weeks.
I think there's a kind of an interesting like I don't know what you would call it, but like Central Michigan and Eastern Michigan are playing each other neutral site, but then Central Michigan hosts Miami, Ohio. So like that, I don't know if that will play any factor in it at all, but that could easily be something that plays into who goes to Detroit.
Yeah, that's definitely the other big one on the slate for this conference. Man, I feel like I know more about the MAC this year than any year before.
Hell yeah.
Anything else on MAC conference football before we wrap up today? Man, these are marathons, guys.
For real. I do have a quick game to close out the show if we want to indulge in that. I know we've talked about the Mount Rushmore doing something like that in the past. I'm curious for you all. I'm going to add Marshall back into the list just because they've had a ton of great players over the years. Who would be on your Mount Rushmore of MAC players in the history of the conference?
Big Ben for sure. He had Miami of
Yep.
Ohio ranked. Yeah. Jordan
I had to
Lynch,
really think about this.
Josh Cribbs at Kent
Jordan Lynch
State.
is a good one. I mean, I think about Khalil Mack too. Who's one of my favorite players to watch back in his stretch of 2010 to 2013 at Buffalo. Mack
Fun
defensive player of
fact.
the year.
Fun fact. The year prior to him winning Defensive Player of the Year, he lost out on Defensive Player of the Year to Luke Wallet from Kent State, who went to my high school.
Dang. All right. That's sick.
Yeah, he was a safety at Kent. Brought Kent to the MAC championship game, where they lost to that Jordan Lynch team. But yeah, Khalil Mack, that's one. That's a good one.
This is kind of recent, and I'm only gonna say this because I liked watching him play, but like Carson Steele, who was on Bowling Green, he was really good as a running back there. I think he ended up transferring to UCLA. So like just because I don't really know a ton of the like really older players, just from watching the MAC in recent years, that was one that he was always fun to watch every week. I think he was on Ball State as well.
Oh, Dree Archer,
Oh yeah,
Toledo.
Dree Archer.
Oh
Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
he was
Dry
good.
Archer, Dree Archer. Yeah, he was phenomenal.
Two players that I want to bring up from Marshall. Randy Moss for sure. I feel like we got to put up there. Blitnikoff Award winner, fourth in Heisman voting, 54 touchdowns in 2 seasons. Just one of the great players of all time, both college and NFL. So I feel like we got to put him up there. And then another player from Marshall that I would put up there for you all would be Byron Leftwich. If you remember,
Oh yeah.
he was the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was a two-time MAC most valuable player in 2001 and 2002. And then he threw for over 11,000 yards and 89 touchdowns throughout his time there at Marshall. So a couple really good players from the Thundering Herd there.
There's two that I gotta shout out. One is because I'm an Eagles fan, Quinion Mitchell from
Yep.
Toledo, and then Curtis Rourke from I believe he was at Ohio on the Bobcats.
Curtis Rourke, man, he brought Indiana. He walked so Fernando Mendoza could run.
Yeah, totally did.
It was phenomenal. Oh, I like that. Yeah, Mac has some history, man. Mac has some history.
Dang. Okay, so certified CFB tradition, Mount Rushmore of the MAC. We want to say Randy Moss, Khalil Mack, Big Ben, and then do we want to decide on a fourth or
Jordan Lynch is up there for me, but
Jordan Lynch?
no.
Well, yeah, because he was one of the Heisman contenders. I think he's got to be up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. I love it. We'll have to do this again for the rest of the conferences.
Oh
That's a
my
good
God, could
one.
you imagine? Brian said about how these have been like a marathon. Can you imagine what the SEC and Big Ten ones are gonna be like? I mean, oh my God,
Oh gosh,
we're
yeah.
gonna
We're
have
gonna
to
have to
split them.
split
Yeah.
those into two. Those are gonna take forever. My gosh. Well, I'm glad we got through the Mac. Anything else before we wrap up today? I
Nope.
think we're good. Nice. Well, for Lucas Miller and Jacob Vanford, I'm Bryan Partiga. Thank you for joining us for these conference previews. We will get to all FBS conferences throughout the year. Appreciate y'all listening to us, and we will be back next time. CFBT out.